The Galactic Council chamber fell silent as Ambassador Zethkri of the Valorian Empire stood before the assembled representatives of 47 star systems. His scaled skin gleamed under the artificial lights, and his 4 eyes burned with righteous fury. The holographic displays around the circular chamber showed the devastating aftermath of what had transpired in the Kepler sector. Esteemed delegates, Zethkri's voice carried through the chamber's translation systems, reaching every species in their native tongue. What you see before you is the complete annihilation of 3 Valorian battle fleets. 12,000 of our finest warriors reduced to debris floating in space. The images were horrific. Twisted metal that had once been proud warships drifted aimlessly through the void. The Valorian ships, known throughout the galaxy for their impenetrable armor and devastating weapons, had been torn apart like paper. Councillor Vrex of the Thalorian Federation shifted uncomfortably in his crystalline exoskeleton, while the gas-based ethereals dimmed their bioluminescent forms in what could only be interpreted as shock. The humans did this, Zethkri continued, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper that somehow carried more weight than his earlier proclamation. These primitive apes from the Outer Rim, who only achieved faster-than-light travel 300 cycles ago, have dared to challenge the natural order of this galaxy. High Arbiter Nolthara, an ancient being whose species had overseen galactic politics for over 50,000 years, raised one of her 6 arms for silence. Her voice, when it came, was like the sound of distant thunder. Ambassador Zethkri, you speak of the humans as if they have committed some great crime. Yet our records show that your fleets entered the Sol system uninvited, in direct violation of the neutral zone accords. The Valorians' mandibles clicked in agitation. The humans possess technology that should not exist. Their ships move faster than anything we have ever encountered. Their weapons cut through our shields as if they were not there. This is impossible according to every law of physics we know. Perhaps, interjected Councillor Yith of the Mechanical Collective, his robotic voice devoid of emotion, your understanding of physics is incomplete. A ripple of what might have been laughter passed through some of the delegates, but it quickly died as Zethkri's rage became palpable. You dare mock the Valorian Empire, we who have conquered 1,000 worlds, we who have existed since before most of your species crawled out of their primordial swamps? The tension in the chamber was electric. The Valorians were known for their pride, their military might, and their extremely short tempers. They had been the dominant military force in the galaxy for over 10,000 years, and their word was rarely questioned. But the holographic evidence before them told a story that challenged everything they thought they knew about galactic power structures. High Arbiter Nolthara gestured, and new holographic displays materialized around the chamber. These showed not the aftermath of battle, but the approach of the Valorian fleets to human space. Let us examine what actually happened, she said calmly. 3 days ago, Admiral Koreth of the Valorian Third Fleet received orders to investigate human technological capabilities. The pretext was a routine inspection of their defensive systems. The display showed 3 massive Valorian dreadnoughts, each one larger than a small moon, accompanied by dozens of cruisers and fighters. The fleet was an intimidating sight, designed to cow any opposition into submission without firing a shot. This was standard Valorian diplomacy: show overwhelming force, demand compliance, and most species would simply surrender whatever the Empire wanted. The humans sent a single ship to meet them, Nolthara continued, a vessel approximately 1/10 the size of a Valorian cruiser. The image shifted to show a sleek, angular ship that seemed almost organic in its design. Unlike the brutal, functional appearance of Valorian vessels, the human ship appeared to flow through space like a living thing. Its hull was a deep blue-black that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Admiral Koreth hailed this vessel, Nolthera said. The response he received was illuminating. The chamber filled with the sound of the recorded transmission. The human voice was calm, almost casual, with an undertone that many of the assembled delegates found unsettling. Valorian fleet, you are in violation of Terran space. You have exactly 60 seconds to turn around and leave, or we will consider your presence an act of war. This is your only warning. The translation systems struggled with some of the human words, but the meaning was clear. Counselor Vrex clicked his mandibles in disbelief. A single ship challenged 3 battle fleets? The human concept of proportional response appears to differ significantly from galactic norms, Nolthara observed dryly. The recording continued. Admiral Koreth's response was predictably dismissive. Inferior species, you will submit to inspection by order of the Valorian Empire. Prepare to be boarded, or we will take your ship by force. What happened next defied every tactical manual in the galaxy. The single human ship suddenly accelerated at a rate that should have turned its crew into paste against the bulkheads. It moved so fast that the Valorian targeting systems couldn't track it properly. Then it opened fire. The weapons that emerged from the human vessel were unlike anything in the galactic database. Instead of the plasma bolts or particle beams that most species used, streams of what appeared to be pure energy lanced out from the ship. Where they touched the Valorian shields, the defensive barriers simply ceased to exist. Not overwhelmed, not penetrated. They were gone, as if they had never been there at all. The first Valorian cruiser died in 12 seconds. The beam weapons sliced through its hull like a heated blade through ice, causing massive internal explosions that tore the ship apart from within. The second cruiser lasted 15 seconds, managing to return fire before it too was reduced to expanding plasma and twisted metal. Admiral Koreth, watching his fleet being systematically destroyed, made the decision that would seal his fate. Instead of retreating, he ordered all remaining ships to fire everything they had at the human vessel. It was a mistake, born of pride and disbelief. Surely no single ship could withstand the concentrated firepower of 2 full battle fleets. The human ship took the barrage head-on. Thousands of plasma bolts and particle beams struck its hull simultaneously, creating an explosion visible from several light-years away. When the energy dissipated, every delegate in the chamber expected to see nothing but debris. Instead, the human ship hung motionless in space, completely undamaged. Its hull hadn't even been scratched. What came next was not a battle. It was an execution. The human ship began methodically destroying every Valorian vessel in the system. It moved like a dancer, weaving between return fire with impossible grace. Its weapons reached out across vast distances, each shot perfectly placed to cause maximum devastation. Fighters, cruisers, dreadnoughts, nothing could touch it, and nothing could survive its attention. In less than an hour, 3 of the most powerful battle fleets in the galaxy had been reduced to scrap metal. The silence in the council chamber was deafening. Finally, Counselor Yith spoke, his mechanical voice cutting through the quiet. The humans broadcast a message on all frequencies after the engagement ended. A new hologram appeared, showing a human female in what appeared to be a military uniform. Her species was still relatively unknown to most of the galaxy, bipedal, mammalian, with what many considered primitive sensory organs. But her eyes held something that made even the most war-hardened delegates uncomfortable. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force," the human said, her voice carrying the same unsettling calm as the first transmission. "To all who witness this recording, Earth has no desire for conquest or expansion. We wish only to be left alone to develop in peace. However, we will not tolerate aggression against our people or our worlds. What happened here today is a demonstration of our resolve. Attack us, and we will defend ourselves. Invade our space, and we will push you out. Threaten our civilians, and we will end you." The recording paused, and when it continued, the human's expression had hardened. "To the Valorian Empire specifically, you have tested our patience and found it lacking. Your ships are unwelcome in Terran space. Your ambassadors will not be received. Your trade offers will be rejected. You have forfeited the right to peaceful coexistence through your actions today." The message ended with a simple statement that sent chills through every delegate present. The galaxy is large enough for all of us. But if you choose to make it smaller through violence, remember that humans are very, very good at violence. Ambassador Zethkri stood trembling with rage as the recording ended. "You see," he hissed, "they threaten the very foundations of galactic order. The Valorian Empire has maintained peace through strength for millennia. These humans would upset the balance that has prevented galactic war for centuries." High Arbiter Nolthara's ancient eyes fixed on the Valorian representative. "Peace through strength," she repeated slowly. "How interesting that you frame the subjugation of weaker species as peacekeeping. The strong rule, the weak serve. This is the natural order," Zethkri replied, his voice carrying the conviction of absolute belief. "These humans possess power beyond their wisdom. They must be brought to heel before they can use their technology to conquer others. Or perhaps," suggested Counselor Vrex quietly, "they should be left alone as they have requested." The suggestion hung in the air like a toxic cloud. The very idea that the Valorian Empire might be forced to acknowledge the sovereignty of a species they considered inferior was unthinkable to many of the assembled delegates. The Valorians had been the galaxy's policemen for so long that questioning their authority seemed almost blasphemous. But the evidence was undeniable. The humans possessed technology that made the Empire's most advanced warships look like toys. They had demonstrated their willingness to use it, and their ability to do so with surgical precision. Most troubling of all, they had shown restraint. They could have easily pursued and destroyed the handful of ships that had managed to retreat, but they had allowed them to leave. That restraint was perhaps more frightening than the raw power they had displayed. It suggested a level of tactical thinking and strategic planning that went far beyond mere technological superiority. As the delegates began to murmur among themselves, a new transmission arrived at the council chamber. The source was immediately identified as human, though the ship sending it was nowhere near council space. Somehow, they had managed to penetrate the most secure communication networks in the galaxy without anyone detecting their presence. The hologram that appeared was of a different human, an older male with graying hair and eyes that seemed to hold the weight of centuries. When he spoke, his words were measured and careful, but there was steel beneath the diplomatic courtesy. "Honorable delegates of the Galactic Council," the human began, "I am Secretary General Marcus Webb of the United Earth Government. It has come to our attention that certain parties may be considering further military action against human space. I am here to inform you that such action would be inadvisable." The chamber erupted in chaos. How had the humans known what was being discussed in the most secure facility in the galaxy? How had they penetrated defenses that had been considered impregnable for thousands of years? Secretary General Webb continued as if he couldn't hear the commotion. "We understand that our defensive capabilities may have come as a surprise to some. We also understand that this may have upset certain established power structures. This was not our intention. We seek only to protect our people and our worlds from external threats." His expression hardened slightly. "However, we are prepared to do whatever is necessary to ensure that protection. Our technology, our tactics, and our resolve are all products of a very long and very violent history. We have learned, through bitter experience, that peace is not a gift. It is something that must be fought for and defended every single day." The human paused, and when he continued, His voice carried a finality that made several delegates step backward involuntarily. "We have shared this galaxy peacefully for 3 centuries. We have traded fairly, kept to ourselves, and RESPA 3 weeks had passed since the Galactic Council session, and the political landscape of the galaxy was fracturing along lines that had remained stable for millennia. The Valorian Empire, humiliated by their defeat at human hands, had withdrawn from all diplomatic relations with other species. Their border worlds had gone silent, and their ambassador had returned to Valoria Prime with demands for immediate military mobilization. On the remote research station Omega-7, Dr. Keyleth Norvax of the Altarian Scientific Consortium stared at the data streaming across her multiple display screens. The Altarians were known throughout the galaxy as the premier researchers and archivists, their 4-armed physiology and enhanced neural processing making them ideal for complex theoretical work. But what Keyleth was seeing challenged everything she thought she knew about galactic history. "Computer, cross-reference human technological development patterns with all known species progression models," she commanded, her voice tight with concentration. The response was immediate and deeply troubling. "No correlation found. Human advancement curve does not match any recorded pattern in galactic database. Technological leap inconsistent with observed time frame." Keyleth's colleague, Dr. Threx Kovalik, moved his bulky frame closer to her workstation. The Kovalik were a methodical species, known for their patience and attention to detail. "Perhaps their development was assisted by outside forces," he suggested. "Unknown alien contact, recovered technology from ancient ruins?" "I thought of that," Keyleth replied, her fingers dancing across the control interfaces with practiced speed. "But computer, display human military engagement analysis." New data cascaded across the screens, showing the tactical breakdown of the Valorian fleet destruction. Keyleth pointed to specific readings with one of her lower arms. "Look at these energy signatures, Threx. The weapons the humans used, they're not based on any known technology in the galactic database." "Impossible," Threx rumbled, his deep voice carrying the certainty of his species. "All sentient races develop along similar technological paths. Plasma weapons, particle beams, gravimetric manipulation. These are universal constants based on fundamental physics." "But what if they're not?" Keyleth asked quietly. "What if the humans found a different path?" Before Threx could respond, their research station's communication array activated without authorization. Both scientists stepped back in alarm. Omega-7's systems were among the most secure in the galaxy, protected by encryption algorithms that would take centuries to break. The holographic display materialized to show a human male, middle-aged by their species standards, wearing a simple uniform without visible rank insignia. His expression was friendly, almost apologetic, but his eyes held the same unsettling quality that many species had begun associating with humans. "Dr. Norvax, Dr. Kovalik," the human said, somehow knowing exactly who they were despite the station's supposedly anonymous research protocols. "My name is Dr. James Harrison, and I represent the Terran Scientific Advisory Board. We've been monitoring your research into human technological development, and we think it's time we had a conversation." Keyleth felt her secondary hearts begin racing. "How did you access our systems? This station is protected by very impressive security measures, yes," Dr. Harrison agreed with a slight smile. "We're not here to steal your research, doctors. We're here because we think you're asking the right questions, and because you deserve to know the truth about human development." Threx moved protectively closer to Keyleth, his massive form casting a shadow over her workstation. "What truth?" he demanded. "What are you hiding?" The human's expression grew more serious. "The truth is that humanity's technological advancement wasn't natural. It wasn't gradual, and it certainly wasn't peaceful." He paused, as if weighing his words carefully. 3,000 years ago, Earth was invaded. The revelation hit the two scientists like a physical blow. Galactic records showed no evidence of any species making contact with Earth before humans achieved faster-than-light travel. The very idea of an undocumented invasion was impossible. The Galactic Council maintained detailed records of all spacefaring civilizations. "That's impossible," Keyleth whispered. "The Council records are incomplete," Dr. Harrison finished. "The species that invaded Earth came from outside our galaxy. They called themselves the Devourers, though I doubt that was their real name. They had technology that made current galactic civilization look primitive. Faster-than-light travel without jump drives, weapons that could crack planets, ships that existed partially outside normal space-time." Threx's translator struggled with some of the concepts, but the meaning was clear. "You're claiming that humans were invaded by extragalactic entities?" "Not claiming," the human corrected. "Stating. The invasion lasted for exactly 73 days. When it ended, 90% of Earth's population was dead. Our cities were ruins. Our technological base was completely destroyed." His voice hardened. "But we learned." The implications were staggering. Keyleth found herself accessing her workstation with trembling hands, pulling up deep archive files that she'd never had reason to examine before. "The gap," she breathed. "There's a gap in human historical transmissions. 3,000 years ago, human radio signals just stopped for nearly a century." "The dark period," Dr. Harrison confirmed. "What we call the learning time. We spent 97 years studying Devourer technology, understanding their tactics, reverse engineering their weapons. But more importantly, we learned about their mindset, about how they thought, how they fought, how they conquered." "How did you survive?" Threx asked, his scientific curiosity overcoming his caution. "If they were so technologically superior?" The human's smile was cold and utterly without humor. "They made a mistake. They assumed that because they could destroy our cities and kill our people, they had defeated us. They didn't understand that humans are very good at surviving. We're excellent at hiding, and we're absolutely exceptional at learning from our enemies." Dr. Harrison gestured, and new holographic displays appeared around the research station. They showed images that made both scientists recoil in horror. Vast machines stripping planets bare, creatures that seemed to exist partially outside normal dimensions, weapons that turned living beings into raw energy. The Devourers saw Earth as nothing more than another resource to be consumed, the human continued. They set up processing stations, began strip mining our planet, and largely ignored the surviving human population. That was their second mistake. "Their second mistake?" Keyleth managed to ask. "Their first mistake was coming to Earth at all. Their second mistake was leaving survivors. Their third mistake was underestimating what humans do to those who threaten our families." The holographic images shifted to show makeshift human settlements hidden deep underground, jury-rigged technology cobbled together from Devourer equipment, and most chillingly, human children being taught to use weapons that no sentient being should ever have to touch. "We fought a guerrilla war for 70 years, Dr. Harrison said matter-of-factly. "We learned their technology, adapted it, improved it. We studied their biology, their psychology, their weaknesses, and slowly, piece by piece, we killed every single one of them." The silence that followed was absolute. The concept was almost incomprehensible. A primitive species not only surviving invasion by a technologically superior enemy, but actually winning through sheer determination and adaptability. "The technology you saw destroy the Valorian fleets," the human continued, "is based on principles we learned from the Devourers. But it's not their technology anymore. We've had 3,000 years to improve on it, to make it our own. What we use now is far beyond what they brought to Earth." Threx's voice was barely a whisper. "What happened to the Devourers?" "We followed them home," Dr. Harrison said simply. "It took us 2,000 years to develop the capability for extragalactic travel. When we finally reached their home galaxy, we discovered that they had consumed every intelligent species they encountered. Dozens of civilizations, millions of worlds, countless billions of lives, all gone. And, Calith prompted, though she was beginning to suspect the answer. And we ended them, the human replied with finality. Every ship, every station, every last member of their species. We made sure they could never threaten anyone else ever again. Then we came home. The revelation hung in the air like a toxic cloud. The two scientists were trying to process the implications of what they'd learned. Humanity wasn't just another species that had stumbled upon advanced technology. They were the survivors of a genocide, hardened by millennia of warfare against enemies that existed beyond normal comprehension. "Why are you telling us this?" Calith asked finally. "Because the Valorians are preparing for war," Dr. Harrison said bluntly. "Our intelligence networks have detected massive military buildup across their empire. They're calling in favors, making alliances, promising other species a share of human technology if they join the fight. They think they can succeed where the Devourers failed." "Can they?" Threx asked. The human's expression was almost pitying. "Doctor, the Devourers could destroy planets with single shots. They could manipulate space and time itself. They had weapons that could unravel matter at the quantum level. And we killed them all." He paused. "The Valorians use plasma bolts and kinetic weapons. What do you think?" Before either scientist could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the research station. Emergency lights bathed the corridors in red, and the station's AI announced in calm tones that completely contradicted the urgency of the situation. Multiple unidentified vessels approaching. All personnel to emergency stations. Dr. Harrison's image flickered, then stabilized. "I'm afraid our conversation will have to be cut short. It seems the Valorians have decided to accelerate their timeline." Through the station's viewports, Calith could see ships emerging from hyperspace, dozens of them, their hulls bearing the distinctive markings of not just the Valorian Empire, but half a dozen other major galactic powers. The alliance that Dr. Harrison had warned about was apparently very real. "Computer, identify approaching vessels," Threx commanded. "Valorian battle fleet designation Alpha Prime, approximately 80 ships. Thalorian Federation Rapid Response Force, 15 ships. Mektari War Pods, 40 units. Zelthawk Heavy Cruisers, 12 ships. Additional vessels of unknown configuration, 37 ships." The AI paused. "Total estimated firepower exceeds planetary bombardment threshold." Dr. Harrison's hologram turned to face the approaching fleet, and for the first time, the two scientists saw genuine anger in his expression. "They're using you as bait," he said quietly. "They know we've been monitoring your research, and they think we'll expose ourselves to protect you." "Will you?" Calith asked, surprised by her own boldness. The human's smile was sharp as a blade. "Doctors, humanity learned a very important lesson during the Devourer War. Sometimes the best way to protect the innocent is to make sure that those who threaten them never get the chance to do it again." The lights on the research station suddenly dimmed, then brightened again. Every electronic system in the facility began operating more efficiently than its designers had ever intended. The station's shields, never meant for combat, began radiating energy signatures that matched the most advanced defensive systems in the galaxy. "How?" Threx began. "Human technology tends to improve whatever it touches," Dr. Harrison explained casually. "Your station is now probably the most heavily defended position in this star system." He turned back to face the approaching fleet. "Which is good, because you're about to witness something that very few non-humans have ever seen." "What's that?" Calith asked. "Humans fighting a real war." The space around the research station began to ripple, like water disturbed by a stone. The ripples spread outward, growing larger and more intense, until reality itself seemed to bend and twist. Then, emerging from what could only be described as tears in space-time, human ships appeared. They were nothing like the vessel that had destroyed the Valorian scout fleets. These were clearly warships, built for one purpose and one purpose only. Their hulls were dark as the void between stars, and they moved with a fluid grace that suggested they were as much alive as mechanical. More unsettling was their number. Sensors showed 13 ships, but visual observation suggested dozens, as if the human vessels existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The lead human ship broadcast on all frequencies, its message reaching every vessel in the system. Attention, alien fleet. You have violated neutral space and threatened non-combatant researchers. You have exactly 30 seconds to withdraw beyond the system boundary, or you will be destroyed. Admiral Zorth of the Valorian fleet responded with characteristic arrogance. Human ships, you are outnumbered 12-1. Surrender now, and we may allow your species to survive in servitude. What came next was not a battle. It was a demonstration. The human ships simply disappeared. Not into hyperspace, not behind some kind of cloaking field. They ceased to exist in normal space entirely. The Allied fleet's sensors showed nothing. Their targeting systems found no trace. Their commanders began shouting confused orders across communication channels that suddenly filled with static. Then the killing began. Valorian ships began exploding with no warning, no visible cause. One moment they were intact. The next, they were expanding clouds of superheated plasma. The human vessels reappeared just long enough to fire, then vanished again before return fire could find them. Their weapons were beyond anything the two scientists had imagined. Beams that seemed to unmake matter at the fundamental level. Projectiles that phased through shields and armor as if they weren't there. The Allied fleet tried to adapt, tried to fight back, but it was hopeless. They were fighting an enemy that could exist outside normal space-time, that could strike from any direction without warning, that possessed weapons centuries beyond their understanding. In less than 20 minutes, over 160 warships had been reduced to debris. Only one ship survived, a single Valorian courier vessel that the humans had deliberately spared. As it fled the system, a human voice followed it. Return to your leaders. Tell them what you have seen. Tell them that this was mercy. Tell them that humanity wishes for peace, but is prepared for war. Dr. Harrison's hologram turned back to the two scientists, his expression grave. Now you understand why we hope to remain hidden. Why we prefer that other species see us as just another minor power on the galactic rim. The galaxy is not ready for the knowledge of what else exists beyond its borders, or for the kind of technology that's required to fight such. 6 months had passed since the destruction of the Allied fleet at Omega 7, and the galaxy had descended into a state of barely controlled chaos. The revelation of humanity's true technological capabilities had shattered the established order, sending shockwaves through every corner of civilized space. Some species had withdrawn entirely from galactic politics, while others had begun desperate attempts to forge alliances with Earth. On Valoria Prime, the heart of the once mighty Valorian Empire, Emperor Cathazon paced the length of his war chamber like a caged predator. The scaled tyrant's 4 eyes burned with fury as he studied the holographic displays showing the devastation wreaked upon his fleets. 60% of the Empire's military forces had been destroyed in various encounters with human ships, and morale among the surviving forces was approaching complete collapse. "My Emperor," General Vorthak said carefully, his voice carrying the weight of impending doom. "Perhaps it is time to consider alternative approaches to the human problem." Cathazon whirled on his subordinate, mandibles clicking in rage. "Alternative approaches? You speak of surrender to these hairless apes? The Valorian Empire has ruled this galaxy for 10,000 years. We do not negotiate with inferior species." "With respect, my lord," the general replied, though his posture suggested anything but relaxation. The humans have proven themselves to be significantly less inferior than we initially believed. The Emperor's response was a wordless roar that shattered several of the chamber's crystal displays. In his rage, he failed to notice the slight shimmer in the air behind him, or the way the shadows in the corner of the room seemed to move independently of their sources. The humans possess stolen technology, Koth Zone declared, his voice echoing off the chamber's walls. Ancient weapons that they lack the wisdom to use properly. We will find a way to counter their advantages. We will strip their secrets from their corpses and use them to rebuild our empire stronger than ever before. A new voice spoke from the shadows, calm and utterly cold. I'm afraid that won't be possible, Your Imperial Majesty. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees as a human figure stepped out of what appeared to be solid darkness. She was tall by human standards, with silver hair and eyes that seemed to reflect light like polished metal. Her clothing was simple, almost austere, but something about her presence made the massive Valorian Emperor step backward involuntarily. "How?" General Vorthak began, but fell silent as the human raised one hand in a gesture that was somehow both casual and threatening. "How did I get past your security? How did I penetrate the most heavily defended fortress in the Empire? How did I walk through walls and shields and energy barriers as if they were made of paper?" The human's smile was sharp enough to cut steel. "Because I wanted to be here, and human technology tends to make such desires into reality." Emperor Koth Zone drew himself up to his full height, towering over the human intruder. "I am Koth Zone the Eternal, master of 1,000 worlds, supreme commander of—" "You're a bully who's finally met someone you can't intimidate," the human interrupted with matter-of-fact bluntness. "My name is Director Sarah Voss of the Terran Strategic Intelligence Division. I'm here to discuss the terms of your unconditional surrender." The silence that followed was so complete that the recycled air systems seemed thunderously loud. General Vorthak's 4 hands moved instinctively toward his sidearms, then stopped as he realized that the human hadn't moved, but somehow seemed to be watching all of them simultaneously. "Surrender?" Koth Zone's voice was barely a whisper. "The Valorian Empire does not surrender. We have never surrendered. We would rather see the galaxy burn than—" "Yes, we know," Director Voss said wearily. "Your species has an almost pathological inability to admit weakness. It's what makes you predictable, and what makes you dangerous to younger civilizations." She gestured, and holographic displays materialized around the chamber without accessing any of the room's systems. "Which is why humanity has made a decision regarding your empire's continued existence." The displays showed images that made even the battle-hardened Valorian officers recoil in shock. Human fleets, larger than anything that had been seen before, moving through space with impossible coordination, weapons that could reach across entire star systems, striking with pinpoint accuracy. Most disturbing of all, planets where Valorian colonies had simply vanished, leaving behind worlds that showed no sign of ever having been inhabited. "For the past 6 months," Director Voss continued conversationally, "we have been systematically dismantling your empire, not through conquest or occupation, but through what you might call selective editing. Valorian military installations, command centers, weapons depots, and fleet bases have been removed from existence. Your colonial governors have been relocated to uninhabited worlds where they can contemplate the consequences of their actions. Your civilian populations have been left untouched, but your ability to wage war has been reduced." Emperor Koth Zone stared at the displays in growing horror. "Impossible. We would have detected such operations. Our intelligence networks were compromised from the beginning," the human said gently. "Your Imperial Majesty, Humanity spent 3,000 years fighting an enemy that could manipulate time and space itself. Your communication networks, your computer systems, your entire technological infrastructure is based on principles that we mastered centuries ago. You never had a chance. General Vorthak found his voice, though it came out as barely more than a croak. "What do you want from us?" "Peace," Director Voss replied simply. "An end to the Valorian Empire's policy of conquest and subjugation. The release of all enslaved species under your control. The withdrawal of your remaining forces to a single star system where you can learn to coexist with your neighbors instead of ruling them." "Never!" Kathzon roared, his rage overcoming his fear. "The strong rule, the weak serve. This is the natural order. We will not be reduced to cowering on a single world like some primitive species." The human's expression didn't change, but something in the air around her seemed to shift. The holographic displays updated, showing real-time images of Valoria Prime from orbit. Human ships hung in space above the planet like silent sentinels, their weapons trained on the surface below. "Your Imperial Majesty," Director Voss said with infinite patience, "you seem to be operating under the misapprehension that this is a negotiation. It is not. We are informing you of decisions that have already been made. You may accept these terms gracefully, or we will implement them over your objections. The choice is yours, but the outcome is not." "You would not dare attack our homeworld," the Emperor snarled. "The civilian casualties alone would be 0, the human finished. Our weapons can selectively target individual buildings, individual rooms, even individual people if necessary. We could remove you from existence right now without disturbing the dust on your desk. Every Valorian citizen would wake up tomorrow to find their government simply gone." To demonstrate her point, Director Voss gestured again. One of the ornate statues decorating the war chamber simply ceased to exist, not destroyed or vaporized, but edited out of reality as if it had never been there. The pedestal remained, the space around it was undisturbed, but the statue itself was gone. "That could be you, Your Imperial Majesty, or it could be your entire leadership council, or every military installation on this planet. The choice is yours." Emperor Kathzon's rage finally gave way to something that might have been fear. For the first time in his long life, he was facing an opponent that he could neither intimidate nor defeat. The full weight of humanity's technological superiority was beginning to sink in, and with it, the realization that his empire had ceased to exist the moment humans decided it should. "What happens to our people?" General Vorthak asked quietly. "If we agree to your terms, what becomes of the Valorian species?" Director Voss's expression softened slightly. "You will be given a chance to learn, to grow beyond your current limitations, to discover what it means to be part of a galactic community instead of its oppressors." She paused. "Some of your people are already making that transition. The younger generations especially seem more adaptable than their elders." "You've been influencing our population?" Kathzon demanded. "We've been offering them an alternative perspective," the human corrected. "Education, cultural exchange, exposure to the species your empire has oppressed for millennia." "It's amazing how quickly attitudes can change when people are presented with new information." The implications were staggering. Not only had humanity dismantled the Empire's military capabilities, they had begun undermining its ideological foundations as well. The very concepts of Valorian superiority and natural order were being challenged by new ideas, new possibilities that their people had never been allowed to consider. This is impossible," Emperor Kathzon said weakly. "No species could coordinate such a comprehensive campaign. The logistics alone are trivial when you possess the right technology," Director Voss replied. "Your Imperial Majesty, humanity has been preparing for war on a galactic scale for 3,000 years. What you've seen so far is barely a fraction of our actual capabilities." She gestured once more, and the holographic displays showed new images. Human ships emerging from what could only be described as tears in reality itself. Weapons that seemed to exist across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Technologies that appeared to violate every known law of physics. We have ships that can exist outside of normal time, allowing us to be in multiple locations simultaneously. We have weapons that can reach across galactic distances instantaneously. We have defensive systems that can render entire fleets completely undetectable. And we have manufacturing capabilities that can replace our entire military within a matter of days. The room fell silent as the full scope of humanity's technological advantage became clear. This wasn't just a matter of superior weapons or faster ships. Humans had access to principles of science and engineering that other species couldn't even comprehend. "Why?" General Vorthak asked finally. "Why reveal this to us? Why not simply implement your decisions without explanation?" "Because," Director Voss said softly, "despite everything your species has done, we believe you have the potential to be better. The Devourers, the species that invaded Earth, had no such potential. They were pure predators, incapable of growth or change. But you have children who dream of exploration instead of conquest. You have artists and scientists and philosophers who yearn for something more than endless war." "The Devourers," Emperor Kathzon repeated slowly. "The species that Dr. Harrison mentioned to the researchers. They were real?" "Very real. And very dead." Director Voss's expression hardened. "They made the mistake of believing that the ability to destroy others made them superior. They learned too late that survival isn't about being the strongest, it's about being the most adaptable." "And you believe we can adapt?" "I believe you can learn too. The alternative is extinction, not at our hands, but from forces that are coming whether we're ready for them or not." The human's eyes seemed to focus on something beyond the physical confines of the chamber. "There are things moving in the darkness between galaxies, Your Imperial Majesty. Ancient things that make the Devourers look like children. When they arrive, this galaxy will need every capable species working together to survive." The weight of that revelation settled over the room like a shroud. The idea that there were threats even greater than the humans was almost incomprehensible. And yet, the evidence of humanity's own struggle against such forces was undeniable. "What would you have us do?" Emperor Kathzon asked, his voice stripped of its earlier arrogance. "Learn, grow, contribute to something greater than yourselves." Director Voss smiled, and for the first time it seemed genuinely warm. "Help us prepare for what's coming. Help us protect the younger species who aren't ready for the knowledge of what exists beyond our galaxy's borders. Help us build a civilization that can survive anything the universe throws at us. And if we refuse, then you will be removed from the equation, and we will find other species who are willing to learn. The galaxy is large, Your Imperial Majesty. You are not irreplaceable." The silence stretched for long minutes as Emperor Kathzon wrestled with the death of everything he had believed in. The Empire, his people's destiny, their rightful place as rulers of the galaxy, all of it crumbling before the reality of human technological superiority. Finally he spoke, his voice barely audible. "What are your terms?" Director Voss nodded approvingly. "Complete demilitarization of your remaining forces. Release of all enslaved or subjugated species. Relocation of your government to a single star system under human supervision. Most importantly, commitment to a new way of thinking about your place in the galaxy. And in return, protection, education, the chance to survive what's coming. And eventually, if your species proves itself capable of growth, membership in something far greater than any empire could ever be." Emperor Kathzone looked around his war chamber one final time, at the displays showing the remnants of his once mighty fleets, at the empty pedestal where a symbol of Valorian power had stood just moments before. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of millennia of history coming to an end. I accept your terms. Director Voss nodded solemnly. Then let us begin the process of building something better, for all our sakes. As the holographic displays faded and the human prepared to leave, she turned back one final time. Your Imperial Majesty? The galaxy's oldest rule was never about the strong ruling the weak. It was about survival. And survival, as humanity learned long ago, sometimes requires us to become something we never thought we could be. She vanished as quietly as she had appeared, leaving the Valorian leadership to contemplate the end of their empire and the beginning of something they couldn't yet understand. Outside the palace walls, across the planet and throughout what remained of Valorian space, the news was already spreading. The empire was no more. But in its place, something new was beginning to grow. Something that might actually be strong enough to face whatever was coming from the dark between the stars. And for the first time in galactic history, that something included humans not as subjects or servants, but as the guardians they had always been meant to be. The galaxy's oldest rule had indeed been broken, but in its place, a new rule was being written. Never underestimate the species that survived the impossible, because they might just teach you how to do the same. Threats. The Devourers, Kalith whispered. Are there others like them? Oh yes, the human replied softly. Many others. And someday they'll find this galaxy, just as they found Earth. When that happens, humanity will be ready. The question is, will the rest of you? The communication ended, leaving the two scientists alone on their station, surrounded by the debris of what had once been the most powerful fleet ever assembled in galactic history. In the space of half an hour, everything they thought they knew about warfare, politics, and humanity's place in the universe had been shattered. And in the depths of space, human ships returned to their patrol routes, their crews preparing for a war that might come tomorrow or in 1,000 years, but which they knew was inevitable, ected the territories and rights of other species. But we will not be conquered, subjugated, or eliminated. Any attempt to do so will result in consequences that I truly hope none of you will ever have to experience. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. In the space of one day, everything the galaxy thought it knew about power, politics, and warfare had been turned upside down. The humans, dismissed as a minor species confined to a few worlds on the galactic rim, had revealed themselves to be something far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. And in the depths of space, far from the political maneuvering and desperate debates, human ships moved through the darkness like silent predators, their crews preparing for a war that they hoped would never come, but which they were more than ready to fight.